This is America on the Road, named Best Radio Show by the International Automotive Media Conference, and now in its 28th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. Despite supply chain issues, rising interest rates in the United States, and competition from the Chinese, a major automaker has retained its title as the top-selling automaker in the world. We'll tell you what that company is and fill you in on the details coming up. Elon Musk and Tesla are in hot water again. Seems like this happens a lot. This time they're in hot water about self-driving claims that have been made regarding some of Tesla's electric vehicles. It's kind of an ongoing thing, but it has bubbled up again, and we'll tell you more coming up. And here's a question for you. Does it cost more to refuel a conventional gasoline car or recharge an electric car? Well, there's a new study on this, and we'll have the answer for you later in the segment. A little bit of a trick question, but we'll give you the answer. I am Jack Nerad. With me is co-host Chris Teague, looking very dapper in his hat, doing great things. He's across the country. He lives at one end of the country. I live at the other. Each week we get together to talk about cars, the car industry, and how you can get the most for your automotive dollar. Getting harder and harder to do that. Chris, tell me about it. Last time we talked, you had snow, up to your ears, I think. Is it better, worse? What's going on?
Well, I don't think I'll call it worse, but we have more. How about that? We're actually looking at about 20 degrees below zero on Friday with wind chills almost of -50. So kids are out of school that day for a planned day off. So it'll be nice to stay inside all day and just stare out the window. So happy to do that. How are things on your side of the world?
Well, things were a little crazy last night, as a matter of fact. I mean, my wife and I heard voices in the middle of the night, and I don't think she was talking in her sleep. And then I wondered if somebody had left the TV on, or you know how sometimes audio just goes on spontaneously or something like that. I did a little investigation, and there were noises coming from right outside the house. I ended up calling the police. Wow. And the police roll in about 2 a.m, and I did a nice job. I never actually saw the people, but they did then round them up. There were like 6 or 7 police cars at the end of our block. I mean, it was major stuff. Wow. At 2 to 3 a.m. So, if I'm a little groggy, maybe that's what it is. But, it got the adrenaline running, that's for certain. I'm not exactly certain what happened, and I'm going to try and get in a report from our local police department, who are terrific, by the way. I mean, they were here in a matter of a couple of minutes once I called 911. And I just didn't want to, with stuff going on these days, I didn't want to take a chance.
I'm happy that things are quite a bit calmer around here. So happy that things worked out for you.
Yeah. Well, so there you go. A little excitement. Well, what is your test vehicle for this week?
I spent the week climbing in and out of the Ram 2500 Rebel, and I can't wait to tell you all about it.
I can't wait to hear all about it, too. I had a little Ram 2500 Rebel experience myself, and maybe we could share that. I will be road testing the 2023 Honda CR-V Hybrid, maybe the polar opposite of the Ram 2500 Rebel. There was a time when Honda was pretty skeptical about hybrids. Now it embraces them, and so we'll talk about that, too. I want to get your take on that. I'm very excited about our special guest this week. Sam Fiorani is the VP of Global Forecasting at Auto Forecast Solutions. Really interesting guy. I mean, Chris, you introduced me to him, and he has some really incisive and surprising things to say about the current auto market. So I'd love to hear what he has to say about that. And so stick around for that. If you're going to buy a car in the next year or two, you really need to hear what Sam has to say, because he knows his stuff. Before we do anything else, though, we'll be bringing you some of the most important auto-related news from around the world. And let's dive right into the automaker that is the best seller for 2022. This is maybe not much of a surprise. I think it's a 3-time winner, 3rd straight year that Toyota Motor Corporation has sold the most vehicles out there. What's your reaction to that? I mean, certainly challenges for Toyota.
Yeah, they all have challenges. Toyota's still fighting its own battles, trying to convince people that its approach to electric vehicles and hybrids is the right way to go. And, they released a study today talking about that. But, they have great value. They have great predicted reliability, and they've improved their technologies to the point where people can't really complain about that as much as they used to. So I'm happy. I guess, I've always expressed being a Toyota fanboy, despite my recent GR Corolla frustrations. But, I think it's not surprising to see they've got the pieces in place.
Yeah, with all these headwinds, of course, all the automakers were facing the headwinds, specifically supply chain stuff that made it very, very difficult, and inventories very low. They sold 10.5 million vehicles globally, and they actually blew away the second place team, Volkswagen Group. Volkswagen Group only sold 8.3 million vehicles. I mean, they were much harder hit, I think, by supply chain stuff. And of course, the European market has been disrupted by the war in Ukraine and fuel prices there. So they had a lot of things to deal with. It'll be fascinating to see what 2023 brings. Toyota has kind of revised down their production forecast. So we'll see what happens there. But maybe this time next year we'll be crowning a new king for best-selling, or maybe it will be a four-peat for Toyota.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I don't honestly see, in my crystal ball that's always so accurate, anyone that's really going to come out of the woodwork here, unless Volkswagen 2023 looks great for Volkswagen, which it could, but I don't see anybody taking it back.
Yeah, it could be difficult, I think, for anybody to come close, especially with that kind of lead. They just won by millions of vehicles. Well, Elon Musk, love him, hate him, like him, whatever you feel about him, whatever you feel about Tesla, he sure is newsworthy, right? And back in the news as the Securities and Exchange Commission continues to investigate his role in putting out self-driving claims for the vehicles. This is in some ways an old story, but it is resurfaced. Who knows why? Is it political? Could be. But in any case, the SEC is probing what he said about the Tesla autopilot driver system. You and I have both chatted and had our opinions voiced about autopilot. What's your take on this resurfacing now?
Yeah, well, this is the SEC investigating them, right? So this is
Yes.
to do with the stock price and financial information, which could have been inflated due to the fact that they over-promoted or oversold this technology. But look, I think from a safety perspective, it's dangerous, and all automakers are subject to this, not just Tesla. We talk about safety equipment and over-promising and under-delivering some of these safety equipments, and then standardizing the terminology so that everybody understands what they're getting when they buy a car. Tesla, especially full self-driving, the car is not actually full self-driving. It's not going to drive itself without the driver there, and people have gotten killed and seriously hurt due to the over-trusting some of these systems. So I think it's right to question some of these things.
I absolutely believe it's right to question those things. The SEC is very concerned about what they call forward-looking statements. When you're selling stock, and at the same time you're putting out there stuff that maybe are inflated claims about what you're going to do, how many vehicles you will sell, how many products you will sell, because it certainly extends all the way across all industries. So there is that, and you could say that Elon is always a bit optimistic about what he talks about, right? And I guess maybe that's not legal, or maybe it is. I really don't know. It's not up to me to judge happily. Another part of the story is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration continues to investigate this stuff. They started an autopilot investigation in August of 2021. And I think at some point they like to finish this thing and see where it stands. But, when you innovate, you often are pressing the envelope, right? And then do you talk about it? And I don't know the answer there.
Innovation is fine. I actually appreciate the things that Tesla has done with technology and the electric vehicle space, pushing everybody forward and, to a degree. But at the same time, even if you're well-meaning in the things that you're advertising, even if you have a caveat somewhere, if you're not very clear about it, somebody's going to take that to heart and they're going to act on it, and they're going to get hurt. They're going to kill somebody else. They're going to destroy property, however you want to go down that road. So it really does need some clarification, and there do need to be some guardrails around what is and what isn't able to be said about these things.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And just telling the truth. That's kind of the first and last rules, I would think.
Yeah, it always helps.
Well, we talked about EV charging. We've talked about EV charging a lot. You have certain challenges there in the cold weather in Maine in the middle of winter here. And things kind of change over time. Certainly, the cost of fuel has come down somewhat, although it's not necessarily as inexpensive as it was 3 or 4 years ago. But it certainly has come down, and that has affected EV charging versus the charging of an versus the refueling of a conventional internal combustion engine car. And these days, based on the cost of driving 100 miles, it's actually cheaper to fill up a gas car than it is to drive an EV, to recharge an EV, at least in the and there's so many variables here. I mean, I'm not sure whether that's the report yet. Asterisk about all these various things. I'll read to you the amount worked out to $11.29 for owners of mid-priced internal combustion engine vehicles to drive 100 miles. That's about 31 cents less than what it costs to charge an EV and drive the same number of miles. So, a little over a quarter nickel and a penny. I would say maybe that's on par. And then if you're on the luxury side, it's actually cheaper to use electricity, charge something like a Porsche Taycan, and rather than filling up a luxury car with gas. So, there's a bunch of things going on. I mean, this is not nearly as cut and dry as a headline would lead you to believe.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, I was reading some of this yesterday. I haven't read the whole story, and just listening to you talk, it made me think about these things again. I think there's vast difference between filling a car up with gas in California and filling up a car in Georgia or South Carolina. The first thing, and the same thing is true for electricity. Electricity rates are probably higher in California than they are everywhere else too. So, I think it's a tough headline to break down. I think you mentioned earlier, there is some nuance there that needs to be explored, but it's stuff like that is going to get people thinking, just like we talked about in the last segment with advertising autopilot. If you say these things, people are going to believe it. So I think we need to dig into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and again, telling the truth, getting the real information out there, and that's what we're all about at America on the Road. I don't think we have any particular axe to grind for EVs, for internal combustion engine vehicles. We just want people to make good buying decisions and help them out with that. So that's what we're here to do. When we come back, we'll be trying to help out with that with some road tests. You were driving the Ram 2500 Rebel. Oh, my goodness. A vehicle bigger than many people's houses. And I was driving the Honda CR-V Hybrid. So stay with us for that. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad back with you for road test time, and two very disparate, different types of vehicles we have for you in this segment. Chris, you were driving a massive, massive vehicle. I had a 24-hour period of driving that vehicle recently too in Detroit, and so tell us about the vehicle you're going to describe this week.
Yeah, a lot of fun, a little bit of frustration. The 2023 Ram 2500 Rebel. There are a lot of numbers in there. This is a giant truck. It's a heavy duty pickup truck. So it's a lot, not a lot, but larger to a noticeable degree than a Ram 1500 or a Ford F-150 that you would see driving to the grocery store. So these trucks are built for work, despite the fact that the Rebel package is an off-road, not only appearance package, but it comes with tires and things like that. But these trucks are made for work. So they're rough and tumble. They're big. They're rough. They're loud. So they did a good job with the comfort on this one though. So, but I'll take a step back and talk about the price to start. So, the Rebel, this is 2,500, not the 3,500, which is more expensive and more capable, but it starts around $70,000. My truck, as tested, had a bunch of options, 87,000, just a little bit more than 87 grand for this pickup truck. It's got a 6.4 liter Hemi, Jack, 410 horsepower, 429 pound-feet of torque. You can get a Cummins diesel in this thing, which takes the towing capacity well above like 20,000 pounds or something crazy like that. But this gas engine sounds great, and it delivers around 19,000 pounds of towing if you can even, find a trailer and tow that around your neighborhood. 8-speed automatic transmission for this thing, 4-wheel drive as well. So the Rebel package brings all-terrain tires, an electronic rear locking differential, and a rear limited slip. So I wanted to talk to you about this. What do you think about the Rebel package, sort of as an off-road, addition to a heavy-duty pickup truck? Ford does it too. Everybody does it. So, what do you think about that as opposed to, to using an off-road pickup truck for work?
Well, I think it's interesting, and a lot of people buy pickup trucks for dual use, right? They work with them during the week, and then on the weekends, or when they go on vacation, they use that, and so I think it makes some sense. I mean, you are certainly hauling around a lot of truck if you're commuting as an individual in that thing, but it makes a statement, certainly. There's a lot to like about this truck, and I think there's a lot to like about the Rebel package too.
I think so. And, if I needed, or if someone needed a heavy duty pickup truck, this is certainly one of the more comfortable ones you can buy. Ram's interiors, even on the heavy duty side, are kind of head and shoulders above the rest of the truck industry, even Ford, despite the fact that Ford sells, more of its super duty trucks than anybody else. But so this truck came with a package that added, I'm going to probably pronounce this wrong, Natura Plus leather interior. So there's no side step. We talked about this being a little annoying. You can add 4 or 5 different side step options. They have a tube side step, just a step, a fold out step. This truck came without a side step, which I understand for off-road purposes. You get the breakover angle. You don't have anything under the truck to obstruct the travel. But for kids, for a dog, for me, being overweight and getting a little bit older, it's a climb into this thing, and it's got a handle, so you really have to step up into it. But once you're inside, as I mentioned, the black Natura Plus leather, it is really luxurious on the inside of this truck. Even the cloth upholstery, I drove one a couple years ago. The cloth upholstery feels nice. With this package, it came with 12-inch touchscreen, wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. Rams uses Uconnect 5, which is part of the Stellantis family. It is an incredibly easy to use infotainment system. Everything is so well labeled. There's no question about what you're trying to do. Now, I will say there are a lot of things on the screen. So while you're driving and you're like, everything is touch. So how do I adjust my heated seats or heated steering wheel, any of that stuff? It is a little distracting, but I think that once, if I drove it longer than a week, you kind of get a muscle memory for where things are, and it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. Excuse me. So full safety package in the truck, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alerts, forward automatic emergency braking. One thing that the premium package did bring, or the trailering package, I should say, is a side view camera. So we talked about this. Honda used to do it. Hyundai and Kia do it. When you put the turn signal on, the center screen switches to a camera view for the side of the truck. So especially in the snow here in New England, where there are huge piles on the side of the road, you put the turn signal on and you have a very clear view of what's on the side of the truck, especially something so large. It's just a very good booster to the confidence level, and makes it a lot easier to navigate such a large vehicle, because it can be kind of cumbersome at times. Plenty of room for 5 people in this pickup truck. Had no struggle with car seats, the dog, kids in the back. There were no conflicts with people in the front seat. So there's plenty of room in here. Jack, I think if you need a work truck and you need that extra capability, this is probably one of the better options. I don't know that I would opt for the Rebel package in the 2500 just because I don't need the off-road capability, but this is a fantastic truck. I think my only complaint is that the steering wheel doesn't telescope, so you end up driving with your arms out a little bit further like a tractor, but overall, a lot of fun.
Yeah, 2 points I really want to make about this thing. One is it's a really big vehicle, but once you're behind the wheel, it's pretty darn agile. You feel pretty good about it, and you can see around it really well. I mean, what you point out with the side cameras, the blind spot cameras and stuff like that, certainly help with that. It also has big mirrors that, kind of dual level mirrors, if I remember correctly, that really help you see. The other thing is when you turn on the turn signal, a lot of times your navigation will go away. So you'll see that view just as, well, do I turn here? Or, it's probably really useful not to lose navigation when you're at an intersection with the turn signal going. So I was turning on the turn signal, then turning off the turn signal, then turning on the turn signal. People behind me must have thought I was schizophrenic or something, or just didn't know what I was doing, which is true, but about different things. So, those are the things I noticed about this truck. It's a cool one, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was driving what I think is very different than the Ram 2500, and that is the Honda CR-V in hybrid form. And it wasn't that many years back that Honda was not a big proponent of hybrids. I don't know whether it was their engineering bent and they went, well, do we really need two motors? Can't we just make an internal combustion engine really efficient and then we don't have to do this hybrid stuff? Or for whatever reason, they kind of let Toyota go off and do the hybrid thing, and they were not necessarily as gung-ho about that. But now they're embracing it, and they're certainly embracing it in the new CRV, which was new last year. And the high-level versions of the CRV are all hybrids, and very sporty. And the hybrids are both the most fun to drive and the most fuel efficient. And we're seeing that more and more. I think that's pretty interesting, though. This is a really good vehicle based on the Honda Civic, of course, that same platform. And the Honda Civic was North American Car of the Year in 2022. Basically, that same platform won North American Car of the Year this year with the Acura Integra. So I guess the jurors really like that platform. But it works very well in the CRV. And in hybrid form, there's just so much to like about this. I mean, the CRV is bigger than it has been this time around, so that's good. And it's always kind of sizing up a little bit. It's always kind of leading the class in interior space, and I think that's very important for people who are buying a compact sport utility. And then you have this excellent fuel economy for not a ton of money. I mean, the basic hybrid is around $30,000, and then when you get the sport touring, more expensive, more stuff, just zootier, $38,000. I mean, $38,000 when you stop and think about it is a lot for a compact pickup truck that used to be, not that many years ago, maybe a decade ago, under $20,000. But what's your take on the all new CRV for this year?
The thing I love that Honda does with their hybrids is they constantly tweak the small details. So if you remember the Insight from a few years ago, they made a big change with the throttle response and with the brake pedal. So the hybrid engine, the hybrid motor kicked in earlier, made it more responsive for the throttle. And at the same time, they made the regenerative braking system feel less grabby and more natural. And those improvements have made their hybrids feel more and more like regular vehicles. And as you mentioned, the CRV, the hybrid CRV is the one to buy if you want a little bit more fun. It's a little bit faster, a little bit quicker, and more engaging to drive. So I think they've done a great job with it.
Yeah, they have made the interior more upscale than ever. I mean, Honda used to be known for very functional interiors, but not necessarily pretty interiors or nice looking interiors. I think this one is both. So you have that. The rear seat legroom is up by more than half an inch. I mean, half an inch doesn't seem like a ton, but it is roomier, so that's good. And the split folding rear seats have 8 angles of recline. So I like the fact that you can adjust that somewhat. That's very useful. Tons of electronic safety equipment in the ADS, the Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. They call it Honda Sensing. So there's a lot of stuff that is standard equipment in the CRV. Kind of blows away a lot of luxury vehicles in terms of standard safety equipment and safety equipment overall. I think, that's terrific. And then there is the infotainment system. We go through those, and Honda's had some issues with those, with not having a volume knob, a tuning knob. They fixed that with the smaller touchscreen. A 7-inch touchscreen is standard on the Sport, but then when you go to the Sport Touring, you get a 9-inch touchscreen. You get a physical volume knob like that. Okay, turn it up, turn it down. Even, this old brain can figure that out. But it doesn't have a tuning knob. Maybe people don't tune stations the way they used to. I still listen to some AM radio and FM radio, of course, and I love it a lot. So, and I want to continue to do that. So that's good. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. How would you sum up the infotainment and what you've seen in Hondas recently?
Yeah, they're a little clunky. I'm glad that they have gone back to adding a volume knob. I'm sad that the larger unit lost the tuning knob, as you mentioned. We listen to Sirius XM and FM radio in the car, and scrolling through stations with a finger or trying to tap an arrow 100 times to get through different stations it's awful. But you have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so most people, or I would assume many people, let's say that, will use that, which overrides the interface and gives you a familiar look. However, it doesn't solve the tuning knob problem. So, but for most people, that gets rid of some of the clunkiness.
It does indeed. And I should put out the fuel economy number. In the sport touring, it's 37 miles per gallon combined, which is, I think very, very good for a vehicle like this. So all in all, I think two very different vehicles, but vehicles worth a look, in the Ram 2500 Rebel and in the Honda CR-V Hybrid, a very fun to drive and yet economical vehicle.
Agree.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, we will be interviewing Sam Fiorani. He will tell us what we need to know about what the market is going to look like in 2023 and beyond. So if you're looking to buy a new car, listen up. He'll be right back, and we'll be right back. So stay with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad back with you, and we have a terrific guest for you. Fiorani is Vice President of Global Vehicle Forecasting at Auto Forecast Solutions. He's giving me a little thumbs up that I have said his title right, which is a good thing. I'm happy when I do that. It doesn't always be the case, but this time I guess it is. And Sam, thanks, number one, so much for being with us. And give our listeners a little idea of what your company does and what you do, and then we'll go from there.
We provide analytical and forecasting services for the automotive industry. Anyone looking for where the industry's going, what's happening, down to the detail. We forecast at the vehicle level at plants around the world. So we cover about 60 countries around the world now, providing numbers going out through 2035 for production and help companies who are in this industry find their direction.
I mean, it's really critical for car companies. They have to do a lot of planning. I mean, when you stop and think about what's in a vehicle, and every part in that vehicle has to be procured, and they have to figure out how many they're going to have and how many vehicles they're going to make. I mean, what you do is kind of critical to that, isn't it?
It's absolutely critical, because vehicle manufacturers are optimistic companies. And when you're providing parts to that company and they say, we're going to build 100,000 of these every year, and those suppliers come to us and say, really, how many are they going to build? And so we say, well, all these competitive forces are in the marketplace, and it's going to be 75,000. It's going to be 25,000. It's going to be 150,000. Doesn't happen very often, but occasionally we think that the market is better than the manufacturer. But usually it's their eyes are bigger than their stomach.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot, and I worked in some car companies. And one of the things you do if you're working in a car company just to keep a project going is maybe you're a little optimistic about the sales of that particular product or products. So it's kind of a natural and self-survival, I think, that is part of the industry, isn't it?
Absolutely. For every successful PT Cruiser, there's an unsuccessful Pontiac Aztek.
Yeah. I kind of cringe when I hear the word Aztec. I mean, it's almost so ugly that it's good, I guess, in a way, and it's fun to see one.
It's got a following.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about what's going on for 2023. Auto forecasting is in the name of your company. This is certainly what you do. What do you think is 2023 will hold, especially for the car buyer out there? What's it going to be like?
Well, with the interest rates coming up, everybody is thinking about where the economy is going and if they're going to buy a car. If this is a good market to buy a car, all that thing. The way the industry has always worked, the actual interest rates going on around the world don't really affect car purchasing, because if you want to sell a car, you'll lower the interest rate as part of the incentive. That's not such a big deal. But when the interest rates are affecting your house price, affecting everything else that you're doing, it's just putting a strain on how you envision the economy that could stop people from buying cars. And so we're hoping that this is a short-lived belief in a recession. We're not even calling it a recession at this point, but the idea that consumers think there's a recession is good enough to create a recession in some cases. So we're hoping that if there is one, it's short-lived, and by the end of the year, we're back on a recovery pace.
It's kind of an unusual market. I mean, a very unusual market, right? That we have rising interest rates at the same time. We have very low inventory levels, and sales are down, though, even with the low inventory levels, are largely because of them. Talk us through that and what that means to people out there about to buy a car.
for a couple of years now, we've been fighting this a supply chain issue, and part of that supply chain issue has been semiconductors, which has been really hampering production of vehicles. So when manufacturers only get so many semiconductor chips to put in vehicles, they're going to put them in the high-end vehicles because that's where they make the most money. It's making limited access to low-end vehicles, raising the average transaction price of a vehicle because now we've only got expensive cars on the lot if you have vehicles at all. So now, because we don't have vehicles, there's less negotiation. Prices are going up even further there. So it's a snowball effect on all these different aspects of the industry. And we're watching inventory levels rise at the moment. They're coming up a little bit, but we're still, the average level in the industry traditionally has been, the target has been 60 days supply, to have 60 days of sales on the lot. We're currently running around 30, which is an improvement over 20 that it was a few months ago. But the industry says they've learned their lesson and we're not going to get back to 60. So we might get back to 45, maybe 50. I think eventually we'll get back to 60 because competition the way it is, people will want to have more vehicles than the next dealership down the street. So we'll get back there, but we're just looking to get to 45 or 50 so consumers have a choice.
I mean, I was talking to the folks at Honda recently, and they were down in single digits in terms of day supply. I mean, just crazy limited supply of vehicles. And that certainly had a huge effect on Honda sales and Acura sales in 2022.
Yeah, Honda, Toyota, Acura, Lexus, Subaru have always been low, but even lower now.
Yeah. Well, so do you think this is going to ease through the year? If you could wait another 6 months as a buyer, would you do that now?
If you can wait any length of time, wait, because it will progressively get better. And as I said, the inventory levels are starting to tick up. We're waiting for them to get to a reasonable level. But right now they're 50% better than they were just a few months ago. So once we get to the 45, 50 day range, then you'll have choice. You'll be able to negotiate. We're hearing that the tacked on prices that a lot of dealers had put on them 6 months ago are coming off now. So prices are coming down a little bit.
Is there a type of vehicle or some types of vehicles that are in larger supply and thus, you're liable to get a better deal on those right now? Or is it kind of across the board that we're just seeing lack of inventory and scarcity?
Yeah, it's a lack of inventory across the board. And so the vehicles that they are producing, you're not going to negotiate too much on because there are very few of them to start with, and they're high end. So those of us who are looking for middle of the road, middle America cars, they're not there. They're there in lower numbers than you'll find high-end pickup trucks or SUVs.
Well, let's switch off and get a little more specific. And I want to talk about electric cars. I mean, we're going to see more and more electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles coming into the market in 2023. Have we reached kind of a critical mass of this where we're getting some kind of real picture about what consumer demand is? Or is this still just early adopters and we're not certain what it's going to mean going forward?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're still looking at early adopters at this point. There are some people coming in going, I want an electric vehicle, but it's not enough that people are exchanging their internal combustion engine daily driver for an electric vehicle. We're waiting for that to come. This year is going to be a high watermark for the EV market in the U.S. We're going to crest 1 million units of sales of EVs this year. But all the players that are coming into the field, it's going to dilute Tesla's market share, and we're going to see Tesla fall under 50% of the market this year. But that's simply because there are so many other players entering. We're still looking at over 640,000 Teslas sold this year. So it's a huge amount of vehicles that one manufacturer is selling, and it's them holding 49% with everybody else holding 51%.
What kind of market percentage is that going to be? All battery electrics. Is it going to be to 10%, or obviously that depends on what your prediction for overall sales are. If you're predicting 1 million sales of EVs, what's your sense of that?
We're still below 10%, but it's quickly approaching that. So by the end of the year, relative to the marketplace, we could be over 10% in December.
On America on the Road, we often talk about electric vehicles as being kind of a good second car or a first car if you have another car, right? As opposed to your lone car. What's your take on that? I mean, are we always going to see electrics as being kind of supplemental, or are we going to see that for the next decade or so, or are they going to be primary cars for people going forward pretty quickly?
We're waiting for that breakthrough. We're waiting for that vehicle that you can plug in and have a full charge in 10, 15 minutes. Physics doesn't say that's going to happen quickly. So we're waiting for something new to come along. But in the meantime, an electric vehicle is a great daily driver if you're not going more than 200 miles in a day. As long as you have a home charger, you're good to go. Charge up at home, drive all day long, and come home and plug it back in, just like you do with your cell phone.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a while before we see electric vehicles taking over every vehicle that you have, because honestly, you can't cross the country and expect to have the same quick time across the country. I went from Pennsylvania to Iowa in a day, and that was in a gas-powered vehicle. So I can't expect to add an hour every 400 miles and still do it in the same time.
Right. Well, you sound like you drive like me, Sam, and I like putting miles behind me, and 1,000-mile days are not strange to me. But I think they're not going to be very possible with most electric vehicles out there. You have to do all kinds of mental gymnastics to do that. Well, I was hoping to ask you about autonomous vehicles, but it looks like the segment is coming to a close. So we're going to have you back pretty soon to talk about that. I really am curious about what you think about where that's going to go. But Sam Fiorani, thanks so much for being with us. We really do appreciate you being with us right here on America on the Road.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to coming back.
Very good. We'll make that happen really soon. And stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad back with you for listener questions. We love to take your listener questions, and we love to hear from you just overall. If you have a comment on the show, you have a question you want to ask us, send it to editor@drivingtoday.com, editor@drivingtoday.com, and we will answer it on an upcoming show and try and give you a good answer. Just the truth is all we're about here. That's what we try for. And so if we can help you, we'd love to do it. And let's take a question right now. Ray in Ventura, California asks this. Well, he's a long way from you in Maine, Chris, but pretty close to me. This is what Ray says. I just heard the state of California is planning to outlaw chrome plating. I'm a hot rod guy, and I can't imagine what that would do to the hot rod and restoration businesses. Do you know anything about this?
I personally don't, Jack. I'm actually very curious about what the environmental impacts of chrome are and if there's a viable substitute for it.
Well, it's interesting, and I think this is aftermarket chrome kind of stuff. I mean, the kind of chrome you would do when you're like redoing a bumper. We don't see that many chrome bumpers anymore anyway on new cars, but certainly on restored cars and on hot rods. And, hot rods, they chrome everything that moves and maybe some things that don't, which is very cool, I think. And the difficulty is apparently chemicals involved in chrome plating escape into the atmosphere and then they could be harmful. Well, okay, I guess we know that, and I don't think there's a ton of this going on. But at the same time, it is a big industry, and it's a big industry in Southern California, as you can just tell from cable shows on TV. There's a lot going on here. So I kind of feel of both minds on this as a guy who lives in California. Certainly, I don't want the air quality to be any worse. I don't want people to be injured. At the same time, I don't know that this is a major problem. This is something that needs to be addressed. It doesn't strike me that anybody has died of cancer of this up till now. I could be wrong. I don't know. But and I love chrome on hot rods, and I love chrome on those vehicles from the 50s, 60s, or from whenever. I love old cars. I love classic cars that have chrome trim. So. Like I say, two minds on this one.
It does make me wonder if there could be a better target for some of the legislation here. I mean, chrome, if it is as harmful as it needs to be banned, it just seems like there may not be that many people still using it, as you said. So I have a lot of questions. I'm going to do some research on this.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, even the way they mitigate it, I think is maybe does more harm than good. So I guess that's not really mitigation. I mean, at least that's what I've read about this. Fairly recently. I think this is an ongoing issue, and we'll see what happens. But anything that would negatively affect the hot rod and restoration industries in Southern California, or in California in general, I guess I line up on the other side.
Yeah.
Well, here is a question from your side of the country, actually, Chris. And Stephen in Providence, Rhode Island, says this. When you talk about electric vehicles, you guys talk a lot about range on a charge, but you don't specify what a good range is. Well, fair criticism, maybe. Can you put numbers on it? Is it 150 miles, 200 miles? Is it 300 miles? What's your take on this, Chris?
Yeah, I think it depends completely on the person and your comfort level and how you have to drive or where you have to go. For me, I think my goal with an EV would be 250, 300 miles of range would be the comfort zone for me. But at the same time, if you have a 300-mile EV or even a 400-mile EV, and it doesn't charge very quickly, then it doesn't really, you're not doing a whole lot of good if you're going to sit there for 30 or 45 minutes. At the same time, if you look at the new Honda Accord, just the standard Honda Accord gets over 400 miles on a tank of gas. There's some difference there. If you're looking to make the switch, then you need to be comfortable with a little bit less range per tank or per charge.
Yeah, I quite agree with you. And I think the reason we don't say, well, it's got to have 300 miles, because some people can get by with 150 miles. And they don't have to pay that huge premium to get twice as much miles on a charge, twice as many miles on a charge. It's a whole different thing, isn't it, than buying a gasoline car? I mean, range isn't an issue when you think about buying a conventional car. I mean, certainly it's nice to have longer range. I love these vehicles where you don't have to fill them up until 500 miles or 400 miles or something like that. I mean, nobody loves to spend a ton of time at the gas station. But unless there's somebody at the gas station they love talking to, maybe, or they love snacks. But when you buy an electric car, I mean, range becomes one of those things where you're kind of buying the fuel tank size, or the equivalent of a fuel tank size, and you really have to pay attention to that, because it's going to make a big difference in whether this is going to work for you or whether it isn't.
Yeah, and excuse me, I'll point out that here in New England, especially the cold weather, so heating up the car, turning on the heated seats, running the heated steering wheel, defrosting the windows, and then just driving in cold weather, all those things combine to make the range a lot less as generous as advertised, up to 40% in some cases I've seen people talk about. So there are a lot of things to think about. I do think now, and we've talked about this before, that range anxiety, the thing that was like the big deal when electric vehicles started being a thing, has kind of faded to the past. I think charging speeds, as I mentioned earlier, is a much more important metric for me. Like the Kia EV6 has around, one of the models has around 300 miles of range, but it also can charge using 800 volt architecture, so it can take on a faster charge, so you get some of that range back. So I do think there's a balance to be struck, but there are a lot of things to think about with an EV that you don't really have to worry about with a gas car.
Yeah. And we really don't have to worry about where we buy gasoline, but you do have to worry about where you're going to charge your vehicle, because, it's great to have that 800 volt architecture and be able to take on that charge really rapidly. But if you can't get on a fast charger that accommodates that, I mean, you're in desperate trouble. I mean, you're just not going to work out for you. And you're not going to have that at home. I mean, unless you're a billionaire, you're not going to install something like that in your house. So it's an issue. It can be an issue, certainly.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. The one of the rest stops here in Maine, leaving on I-95, they have several chargers. A lot of them are 150 kilowatts, but they have two 350 kilowatt chargers. Both times I've been there, I've never been able to get them to charge anything past like 150, 175. So I guess that could be due to the vehicle, but it's also taking advantage of those speeds is important. So a lot of things to think about. These are all interesting questions today, Jack.
Yeah, well, let's see if this one is interesting too. Rick in Waco, Texas says this. I've heard you talk about certified pre-owned cars, but when I look at them online, it seems like they're more expensive than cars that aren't certified. Is getting a certified used car worth the cost?
For me, yes, absolutely. You pay a little bit more, but you get a lot more in return. So you get the inspection up front. The dealership, most automakers require like a 100-point inspection or whatever the number is. You get an extended warranty, usually up to 100,000 miles in some cases, a few more years on there. And you get generally a better quality used car, right? This thing has been picked over a little bit more. The requirements to become a certified car are stricter, so the mileage has to be lower, the year has to be newer. So you're getting a sort of a better, less used car overall. I do think it's important to be careful though, because some dealerships slap a certified sticker on there that they have certified in-house, so to speak, that the automaker does not actually honor the warranty or anything like that. So there are some things to think about there, but I do think it's worth it.
I largely agree with you, Chris. I think that in some instances, it's really in some ways insurance, isn't it? I mean, it's peace of mind as opposed to anything more tangible than that. But it's nice to have peace of mind. A lot of people buy new cars because they get a long warranty. They know nobody has had this before. They believe that the manufacturer is going to stand behind them. When you're buying a typical used car, you're buying it as is. There it is, and if you pay for it, take title and drive off the driveway and it falls apart, you're on the hook, and there's nothing much you can do about that. Certified pre-owned takes the worry of that out of the equation, and it's worth money. I think it's worth some money to people. How much? Well, you can balance that, but certainly certified pre-owned cars are typically more expensive than non-certified because you're getting more value from that, or potential value. And that value, I think, largely is in the peace of mind, the warranty coverage you're getting. And as you say, the fact that not every used car can be certified. They don't qualify for that. They're just not good enough to be certified.
Yeah, I have a tendency to buy used cars with like 200,000 miles on them and then let them fall apart. But if I were buying a newer used car to use for my daily driver, it would be certified all the way.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I think that's our show for the week, Chris. Love to talk with you about cars. Thanks so much for being with us on this show.
Yeah, I always love being here. Before I read us out here, Jack, I want to talk about your test driver for just a minute. We have a great giveaway coming up in February. We're going to give away a ticket to a day pass for Team O'Neill Rally School in New Hampshire. I'm working on a Skip Barber School in California for people who don't live on the East Coast. But we do have great giveaways. We also have great news and stories every day there. So I encourage you to check out yourtestdriver.com. But if you like what you heard here and you want to take us with you, please check out sportsmapradio.com. There you can find us on the Saturday schedule. You can find our formatted podcast on all the major platforms, as well as a radio version of the show right there.
Yeah, and I'd love to have you check out my latest book. It's called Dance in the Dark. It's a crime thriller inspired by true crime, kind of a follow-on to Fatal Photographs, my coverage of the famous Hollywood bathing suit model murder case. In fact, that's a book you might want to pick up sometime. I think it's a pretty interesting book, pretty interesting story. So look for that. It's on Amazon, available in paperback and a Kindle edition. And of course, if you like the show, please pass it on. Let people know when they can hear it on the radio station on which you listen to the show. And of course, we're available as a podcast, as Chris said. If you like the podcast, review it well if you are so moved. Subscribe, and we'll speak with you at least every week on America on the Road. And join us again right here for another edition of America on the Road.